But one that I put up higher on the list here in after Sunday's games was Kendre Miller in New Orleans. Had a touchdown run, 10 carries in that game. Alvin Kamara's already set a new touches, his own personal best for touches in the season. He's already at 287 touches. They have 4 games left, so this is a team that's going nowhere. They just gave him a contract extension. Maybe they try to take some more work off of his plate and give it to Kendre Miller. So just another player to potentially stash here. I do worry about the overall offense for the Saints.
Oh, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah, Rattler's back in there. They were awful with him at quarterback earlier this season. So he doesn't have even if he would get the entire backfield here, if Kamara would get an injury or would miss some time, the upside of this offense is pretty limited. So, but Kendre Miller's another guy to add to the list of potential handcuff stashes.
What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
If you've made it this far in the 2024 fantasy football season, felicitaciones, mis amigos. My name's Joe. That's Tom Brawley. It might be playoff time for you in some of your leagues, maybe where there's 4 playoff teams. That's a separate discussion that I'll have elsewhere, but I like smaller playoff fields in 12-team leagues. Maybe your playoffs start next week. Nonetheless, if you're looking at the waiver wire right now, you are preparing for the playoffs because you either have to win to get in or now you're in the playoffs and you've got to get as much points as you possibly can. That's the good news. The bad news is if you're listening to this show and are expecting a game changer to come down the pike, not too sure that's going to happen. But Tom Brawley, for the first time all season, we might actually have multiple options at the running back position. And we didn't have that season-long league winner at the position that seems to happen every year. This is like the first year in forever we didn't have one of those. You know, last year you had guys like Kyron Williams and Devon Achane who were either late round picks or were waiver wire pickups after a couple of weeks who won leagues. This year that guy did not exist. That being said, if you made it to this point, there are some names out there on the waiver wire who could help you to a championship.
Yeah, and if we're going back to the San Francisco 49ers backfield for the second straight week. Earlier in the year, it looked like maybe Jordan Mason might be that guy off the waiver wire that could be the league-winning guy. Looked like he might get his chance after Christian McCaffrey goes down against the Bills, but he ends up picking up a high ankle sprain, and he's going to be out for the season. So Isaac Guerendo was the next man up, and he looked damn good in his debut as a starter for the 49ers yesterday. But of course, he picks up an injury and has to walk off the field. He gets checked out in the blue tent and leaves early. And of course, the 49ers are playing on Thursday Night Football, Joe. So good chance that we're not going to see Guerendo in that game.
All right, so let's talk about that 49ers backfield because now there is in a deeper league, there is a chance this guy was actually picked up. He was picked up in the FPI, America's favorite fantasy football league, where I was in the gutter all season because my first pick was Christian McCaffrey. His name is Patrick Taylor. I believe he's a former Green Bay Packer. Got a late touchdown against the Bears in that debacle of a game in Week 14. But he is probably going to be the starter. Yes, we are down to the 5th string San Francisco running back because you can't forget about Elijah Mitchell, who's missed the entire season. And if he is not available, is he Abanikanda? Derek Lavelle? Is Derek Lavelle still around?
Yeah. Keyshawn Vaughn was the 3rd back that was active on game day. I don't know if I would go that far. It does seem like this is a mild injury for Guerendo, but then again, the 49ers haven't exactly been extremely forthcoming with the media and with injuries so far this season. So I would take everything that they say with a grain of salt. But it's looking like Patrick Taylor, at least he's been in the system. He's been with the 49ers all season on the practice squad. So he should have a grasp of the offense. But then it's going to be Keyshawn Vaughn and Abanikanda behind him. I would think that they would probably have limited roles in this game against the Rams. So it's Patrick Taylor's the next man up here, and we've seen it earlier in the year with Jordan Mason. We saw it yesterday with Isaac Guerendo. if you're the lead back in this offense, you're going to get opportunities in the running game. And even without, some of their key pieces on this offense right now, they still ran the ball fairly effectively in that game against the Bears. So Patrick Taylor, if you were fortunate enough to go out and get Garendo last week, maybe you don't have that fab budget anymore or that waiver priority. So maybe if you whiffed on that, or maybe you were the guy that was looking to pick them up because he had Christian McCaffrey or Mason, maybe now is your opportunity to get the next man up here, and Patrick Taylor. Maybe he can fill in for you for maybe a week or two here.
I think he's instantly an RB2 on the radar. So, yeah, with that Thursday night football game, it seems unlikely that Isaac Garendo is going to play. A guy who actually, I made a wrong decision, Tom. I saw that the Raiders were, as they tend to be, were heavy underdogs this past weekend.
Yep.
And I'm like, no Zamir White, no Alexander Madison. I'll throw Amir Abdullah in my lineup, as opposed to, I had an option between Sincere McCormick and Amir Abdullah. I went with Abdullah. Wouldn't have mattered anyway, so I can just say, all right, you made the wrong call. You lost anyway. But Sincere McCormick has been by far the Raiders' best running back this year in terms of early down efficiency. Zamir White and Alexander Madison were terrible. They're hurt. Amir Abdullah, obviously, they view as kind of a special team or third down type of guy. Sincere McCormick's come in here for the Raiders and has run the ball effectively. And that is something that Antonio Pierce, for good or bad, wants to do. And McCormick has earned, in my opinion, the Raiders' starting running back spot here over the last month of the season. And I'm not trying to tell you that he's going to win you leagues, but maybe he could sneak into a flex spot for you here down the stretch.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but the matchups aren't too bad here. They have matchups against the Falcons, the Jaguars, and the Saints remaining, so a pretty friendly running back schedule overall. And I think McCormick has taken this job and kind of run with it. We'll see how it plays out this week. Alexander Madison and Zamir White could be back in the mix. They've missed the last 3 games for injuries, but then again, we kind of thought that last week, and those guys weren't healthy enough to play again in week 14. So, but even if they are healthy enough, I think they're going to give McCormick another chance here. He's kind of taken the job and run with it a little bit. I had a similar decision to you, Joe. I played Amir Abdullah in a spot just because I thought it was going to be a pass-heavy game script, and I thought maybe Sincere McCormick would get kind of wiped out, but they kind of stuck with him even in a negative game script last week. So, he's looked strong here, averaging 5.3 yards per carry. And that includes that matchup with the Chiefs in week 13. Teams have really struggled to run the ball on the Chiefs, so he's had some success here in some tougher matchups. So if we look at Madison's yards per carry, it's sitting at 3.3. Zamir White's even worse at 2.8 yards per carry. So these backs that were in front of Sincere McCormick were struggling even, earlier in the season here. So I think McCormick's got a chance here to take this job. I don't know what that's going to entail here. We did get a little bit of good news. Aiden O'Connell, it looks like he's not going to miss extended time. That looked like a serious situation with his, he needed an air cast, needed to be carted off. So if he's able to get back in the next week or two, he does lift the ceiling of the offense a little bit. Looks like they might be stuck with Desmond Ridder this week. So, if you do pick up McCormick, you want Aiden O'Connell back in the offense to give it a little bit higher ceiling. Maybe he can score, a rushing touchdown or 2 here over the final couple of weeks of the season.
Tom, this is going to be pretty much an entirely running back focused show. And I think one of the biggest disappointments, or one of the more confusing situations that we saw in week 14 was, early in the year, we're worried Breece Hall was a top 5 pick. We're worried Braelon Allen's coming in here. Oh my God, this guy looks so good. And they've got to give him touches and it's going to hurt Breece Hall. But at least we know Braelon Allen is the locked in handcuff to Breece Hall, right? Not so fast, my friend. Braelon Allen surprisingly splits work in week 14 with another rookie. We saw him at the Senior Bowl, Isaiah Davis from...
Is he South Dakota State?
He is a South Dakota State Jackrabbit.
Yeah,
well done, T-Bro. I put you on the spot. He is a South Dakota State Jackrabbit. He was a 6th-round pick, and it seems like the Jets really like the juice that this guy gives them in the backfield. Not that we should trust what the Jets like, but, I mean, they at least have some evidence here because Isaiah Davis has scored 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, the Jets, their Joe Douglas is now gone there. Got fired earlier this season, but it sure looks like he can pick some running backs. He selected Breece Hall a couple of years ago, then gets Braelon Allen and Isaiah Davis as day 3 picks. We got a little bit of sense that something like this could happen in week 13. Davis was more involved when Breece, he was nursing that sore knee. So John and I on the Final Point show, we were getting some skanky running back questions, and we were leaning towards playing Isaiah Davis in some spots just because of the uncertain situation here. And it was a little bit of a surprise, though. It was a 50-50 split. It wasn't something like we were thinking maybe it would be 65-35, some kind of split like that with Braelon Allen, but it was a pretty 50-50 split. So Breece, Adam Schefter reported before the games in week 14 here that they don't plan on shutting Breece Hall down, but I mean, they're going nowhere. They lost another game against the Dolphins here. They actually do have a pretty good schedule against the Jaguars, Rams, and the Bills over the next 3 weeks. So we'll see about Breece's availability, but if you need a flex potential play here over the next couple of weeks, Isaiah Davis, if they're going to continue to split it 50-50 with him and Allen, he can get it done. And he's shown some chops in the passing game as well the last 2 weeks. So, yeah, I think he's at least on the radar here if you're looking for anybody with a pulse at running back.
Obviously, we have the injury to J.K. Dobbins, which is not necessarily season-ending. Maybe he's able to come back if the Chargers make the playoffs. But his injury has kind of thrown the Chargers' backfield asunder because he was providing explosive runs. That is something, no. Only in the NFL do you want explosive runs, I'll tell you that. But it is not something that Gus Edwards and Hassan Haskins have given the LA Chargers because they have none. These guys are constipated. There are no explosive runs with these two guys. Tom, you watched the game last night. They gave Kamani Vidal greater than a 50% snap share. Yep. And you have to wonder if the LA Chargers are going to start trying to get some explosiveness in their run game with the rookie Vidal going forward.
Yeah, they're giving it a chance here. Gus Edwards actually had a good game for his standards right now. Had 10 carries for 36 yards and a rushing touchdown. Almost got to double-digit fantasy points for the first time. But no, this is, Dobbins is available to come back in week 17. We'll see if it actually does happen. But Vidal, they're putting a little bit more on his plate here. So maybe this continues to grow. I still think he's one of these guys maybe you can just stash and hope that something happens here over the next couple of weeks. But he hasn't actually looked that great either. Nobody in this running game has really been able to give it up much juice here. Even with J.K. Dobbins, he's been struggling a little bit before his injury. So this backfield has been kind of a mess here recently, and that's probably why they've gone a little bit more pass heavy. But if we're looking for a guy, Vidal, hopefully somebody gives this backfield some life, and maybe he's the guy.
Tom, one more guy I wanted to talk about here, and then I'll tell everybody to come to FantasyPoints.com to read about the other positions, because let me tell you, it's pretty freaking barren out there, folks.
Yes.
But one more guy I want to talk about at the running back position, because Bucky Irving, who has been, honestly, if we were looking for one of those guys who was kind of maybe a late round pick, waiver wire league winner, it might have been Bucky Irving. The problem is now he's dealing with that back injury. They said Todd Bowles said it tightened up on him. They're going to try to get him loose. It's a back, he could wake up tomorrow and feel great. He could wake up for 2 straight weeks and not be able to walk. It's one of those things for Bucky Irving. And Sean Tucker, he of earlier in the season, it's going to be a 3-man backfield, which they very quickly abandoned. I wonder if he'll be able to work in a rotational role with, all of a sudden though, Tom, Rachaad White, who looks far more explosive than he had at really any point in the last 2 years. And you wonder if Rachaad White splitting that work with Bucky Irving was ultimately good for him in the long run.
Yeah, that he had by far his best game in a while, especially as a runner, 17 carries for 90 yards in that game. Tucker ripped off a long run as well, ended up with 47 yards. A pretty limited role, though, for how early Bucky Irving left that game. Very positive game script, so I would expect if it's a full week of preparation, And if they kind of know that Bucky isn't going to play this week, that Tucker would have a bigger role next to Rachaad White. But yeah, this Bucky Irving injury, he was really coming on strong here, entering the fantasy playoffs. So if you're hurting at that position and you've been using him, maybe you want to handcuff him with Sean Tucker. And I want to throw another name out there. We have a whole list of handcuff stashes that we've had updated throughout the season. But one that I add, put up higher on the list here in after Sunday's games was Kendre Miller in New Orleans. Had a touchdown run, 10 carries in that game. Alvin Kamara's already set a new touches, his own personal best for touches in the season. He's already at 287 touches. They have 4 games left. So this is a team that's going nowhere. They just gave him a contract extension. Maybe they try to take some more work off of his plate and give it to Kendre Miller. So just another player to potentially stash here. I do worry about the overall offense for the Saints.
Oh, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah, Rattler's back in there. They were awful with him at quarterback earlier this season. So he doesn't have even if he would get the entire backfield here, if Kamara would get an injury or would miss some time, the upside of this offense is pretty limited. So, but Kendre Miller's another guy to add to the list of potential handcuff stashes.
I'm pretty sure I could count on 1 or 2 fingers the teams that I would less rather be than the Saints in terms of a franchise perspective. But that's a discussion for another day. For anybody who subscribes to Fantasy Points or doesn't, stay tuned. Our 2025 early bird special, which is going to be the cheapest rate you can get for a full 2025 season for the entire year, is coming very shortly. It is a great gift for the fantasy lover in your family. It is coming down the pike shortly. Please stay tuned. That's Tom Brawley. I'm Joe Dolan. Trey Camberling producing behind the scenes somewhere, probably cooking up some slop in the betting lab. But it was wonderful talking to you. Check out the waiver wire article on FantasyPoints.com. Good luck in Week 15, everybody. Take it easy.